The NBN is dead.
So what happens now? Welcome to Vertical Hold, the tech show where we channel surf through the headlines in search of the big picture. I'm Alex Kidman and I'm joined by a man who recently jumped out of a perfectly good plane, Adam Turner. Adam, what's rapidly falling in the tech world?
The Vertical Hold team were big winners at the recent IT Journalism Awards for 2013.
Vertical Hold was a finalist in the Best Video category, and both Adam and I were finalists in the Best Tech Columnist categories. Adam was also a finalist in Best Tech Reviewer.
But Alex here brought home the glory, winning the Helen Dancer Best Consumer Technology Journalist Award.
Go us!
Microsoft has caved into pressure and finally decided to sell the Xbox One games console without the Kinect camera and motion sensor. The move brings the entry-level Xbox One price down to $499, undercutting Sony's PlayStation 4, which has always kept the camera as an optional extra.
Telstra's announced it's spending over $100 million to try and set up 2 million Wi-Fi hotspots nationwide throughout Australia. Although it's only actually going to be setting up around 8,000 with its own hardware and leveraging its massive customer base to set up the rest. The idea is if you're a Telstra broadband customer, you will offer up a part of your bandwidth to anyone who's passing by who needs a Wi-Fi hotspot, and in return you get to use everyone else's hotspots when you're out and about. If you're not a Telstra customer, you'll be able to pay a fee for the same thing. Telstra's inked the deal with FON, an international hotspot company that offers around 12 million hotspots in other parts of the globe. The service isn't due to kick off until next year.
Australians are shying away from the idea of paying for a second SIM card to connect their tablet to mobile broadband, according to Australian analyst group Telsight. It seems that more than 80% of us would prefer to use a Wi-Fi hotspot or a hotspot generated by a smartphone than pay for a second SIM card.
Retailer Dick Smith Electronics accidentally outed a release date for the Google Chromecast, briefly offering it from the 28th of this month for $49. The listing's since been pulled, but it looks increasingly likely that we will see the Chromecast sooner rather than later.
So, Alex, it looks like the national broadband network is pretty much dead. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a goner.
Yeah,
I better
call it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. 6 feet under, basically, except, all the copper ducts are full of asbestos, apparently. But, look, I better clarify that. The National Broadband Network, as it was originally envisaged, and even the policy that the Coalition took to the last election, they're completely dead.
Yeah.
But even this mixed technology model that Malcolm Turnbull was talking about, honestly, I think that's a bit dead too. The most recent budget, the government has signalled that they will cease funding NBN Co from 2018, and that the full commitment of their funding is going to be capped out at $29.5 billion. Now that sounds like a large sum of money, and in one sense it is, but it's nowhere near enough to get the job done. They know this, and they've flagged that after that it comes down to private investment. That's why I think the National Broadband Network is dead, because the value of the network is not so much in this argument of, it lets people pirate TV and that's all people are interested in. No, rubbish. That is not the value of the network. The value of the network is in the interconnectedness. It's in the fact that you could have a fast fibre, or even arguably a reasonably fast fibre to the node connection to everyone and everything. You can start delivering medical services and education services. You can start offering genuine teleworking opportunities even in regional areas, which then has knock-on effects for even stuff like the stuff that Tony Abbott seemingly loves, like building roads. Well, if you can cut even 5% of the cars off the roads because those people can work out of a home office, or they can work out of a shared co-location space, or anywhere like that, suddenly those roads work a whole lot better. They're environmentally... I could go on and on for days.
But everything you're talking about relies on everyone having pretty much the same grade of connection. So then you get the economies of scale. Someone can say, right, I'm going to roll this out across the whole country because I know pretty much the whole country can use it. Unlike now, where you have this hodgepodge mess and someone in one street gets 100 megabits per second and the next door neighbour gets 5. What we're doing is pretty much reproducing that. We're going to this next mesh sort of a hodgepodge network, and you never know who's going to have what, which means you'll never be able to roll that stuff out safe in the knowledge that all your customers or all your employees can use it. And so therefore no one will bother, therefore the whole thing's sort of lost its value.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, look, to be politically fair, I'm not going to say that the initial rollout pre the last election of the NBN was a shining example of how to do it, because it wasn't. Mistakes were made. Things were not done as well as they could have been, and the whole thing could have been much better managed. But
the underlying idea was good, though. The underlying idea was to do it once,
do it right,
and give everyone
solid, and the
pretty much the
underlying
same
idea,
thing.
I certainly think, was something that had significant economic value for Australia. But it's just not going to happen.
No.
If the government funding ceases in 2018 and then they've got to chase up private funding, that private funding is going to want a serious and fairly immediate return on its investment. That private money is going to do what telecommunications money has done in Australia forever. Capital cities, big areas, business, and suddenly it's just these, it's the same old.
Another generation of haves and have-nots.
Exactly, and then suddenly that network is just not as good as it could be. It's a massive, massive missed opportunity. And it even leaves us in this position, and I suppose this is the second part of it. Because, look, I don't like it, I think that's probably pretty darn clear, but the reality is that this is the reality. It is very, as much as there's a lot of speculation about it right now, it's practically impossible, I'll call it. It is impossible we will have a double dissolution election this year. Sorry guys, not going to happen.
I don't think it's very likely.
There's no political advantage for the incumbent government to do that. The situation could change, but it's so unlikely. As such, that is going to be the policy for the next couple of years, which means it's going to be the policy towards the end of the decade, basically, irrespective of who wins the next election. They're only funding through to 2018. They still don't have a deal on paper even for the fibre to the node bits which were going to be done. And as we saw with the previous full fibre thing, these negotiations take a lot of time.
And all those details, all the details with the copper have got worse than they were before, because they quietly dropped the end user speed guarantee, and now they're not really saying anything about fixing the black spots. So if your copper's dodgy and that's what's the problem with your broadband, nothing might change. You might get fibre to the node and the fibre might get closer to your house, but they're not going to come around and fix up the black spots. They're not going to care what kind of speed you get at your house. And that's the problem that we have now. So many people might get 10 megabits on a good day, and then it rains and they get nothing. These people might not see much benefit if a lot of money isn't sunk into fixing up the copper.
Absolutely, and I mean, it's to Telstra's benefit, in fact, to hold on to what it's got, because if it's all going private, then they're just going to be competing. In this case, I mean, it seems likely, because we've had a lot of consolidation, they're going to be competing against Optus, against iiNet,
others doing fibre to the
TPG.
basement and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly, and TPG's already kind of in this space, and you could even argue that Telstra's Wi-Fi play that we talked about in the news is a kind of move towards that kind of
very
network piece.
There'll be people coming out saying, see, we don't need the NBN because of that. People who don't know what the hell they're talking about.
Technical ignoramuses.
Yes, but it won't stop them.
Get it.
No,
of course it won't. Of course it won't. The reality is, though, we're going to have people who are going to be stuck on ADSL. I guess, look, presumably this $28 billion will get spent, hopefully largely in regional areas, and I don't live in a regional area, but I'm hopeful that the broadband situation can get a bit better there.
It's hard to begrudge them getting, when they've always been behind the cities, it's hard to begrudge them catching up.
And again, I do think even in a small scale, it does offer some of those advantages of being able to then, take Australian products and services worldwide, as well as, for example, take advantage of government services. But you're going to have groups on that. You're going to have groups on HFC, and I mean, I'm on HFC, and I'm lucky. I admit that. But having said I'm lucky, it's not terribly good. It's a shared resource. The technical stuff, as I understand it, is that, yes, you could upgrade HFC to the point where it would be a near 100 meg connection.
Well, that's basically what they're talking about, because, see, under this plan, I'm probably going to end up on HFC. I've got HFC cable in my street, but I can't get it, because often when HFC cable was rolled out, not every house got it. So the plan is they're going to come back and hook up every house in the street. Now, putting 3 times as many people on it is obviously not going to help. when you talk to someone like Simon Hackett, who's got a lot of respect in the industry and from both sides of politics, he says that yes, technically it can be done. You could upgrade the HFC network to the point where it could take 3 times as many users and offer 100 megabits per second. But, and this is a big but, only if they do it properly, only if they don't skimp and cut corners, let things like contention ratios and stuff blow out, which mean that too many people are sharing the one connection. And the one thing we've seen from this government when it comes to things like this is they want to cut corners, they want to save money. So I don't really think you can trust these people who say, yeah, we're going to do HFC and we're going to make it work, but at the same time we don't want to spend any money on it and we want to do it as cheap as possible. If they do it cheap, then it wasn't worth doing it all, and we're all going to be back where we started.
Again, yeah, and absolutely. At the moment, Telstra and Optus own those networks, and they realise that after 2018, they probably want to own those networks again. So either they hold out for the big bucks from NBN Co, and guess what? NBN Co doesn't have big bucks. It's got a very finite limit on its spending. Or they just hold on to it themselves, and people connect up as they have done with the same rotten connection ratios. It's not a good thing. So as such, and this would almost be humorous if it wasn't so bloody sad. A number of weeks ago, the Communications Minister, Malcolm Turnbull, made an offhand comment, and it was a bit snide, I'm sorry Malcolm, but it was, about, from a woman who's complaining that she couldn't get broadband services where she'd moved, and he said, and I'm paraphrasing here, why on earth did you move there? Yeah. You should move somewhere where there's better broadband, was the essential gist of his tweet. And as I say, that's not 100% hindsight. But that being said, this caused an enormous storm because it was an incredibly arrogant thing to say. But the reality is, and I'm sure Malcolm probably knew all this whole budget stuff was coming, what with being in the government, is that this is actually what you're going to need to do. If you want a really good broadband service in Australia, you need to move to where the fiber's already rolled out. So in New South Wales, you're talking places like Armidale or Kiama. In Victoria, it's Brunswick, am I right?
Brunswick's one, yeah. There's a couple of others around. Brunswick is the main one that got rolled out first. Good coffee, good broadband. I think I'd move in and never leave.
I might join you. Yeah. But seriously, this I think is where you're going to find decent infrastructure for a while. Obviously, questions about who's going to maintain some of this stuff, although fibre should be more durable than copper, remain. But that's actually where you're going to find good broadband in Australia, probably, I suspect, for about 10 to 15 years. And I mean, that's ultimately why I'm pretty confident in saying, look, the national broadband network is dead. Yeah. We've got maybe some little bits and pieces here and there, and that's it.